Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltiziak, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast, part of the Minute Media Podcast Network. This season, it's all grit. I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players, gaining more insight on what makes this team go. The Detroit Lions are now in a new, grittier era, and we look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. Welcome to another episode. In this episode, we discuss the Detroit Lions' 31-9 victory over the Minnesota Vikings. We'll talk about the game, the players, the coaches, the back-to-back NFC North division titles, the number one seed in the playoffs, and the crowd atmosphere at Ford Field. All of that and more. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
This is Jameer Gibbs, and you listen to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
Joining me today is James Cook, the senior sports writer for the Traverse City Record Eagle. James, good to have you here.
Good to be here. A lot of 1-0s. I counted up to 15-2.
And we owe Coach for that. He's not just a math guy. He's a 1-0 guy. He keeps us on the right course. He talks about stack, and that coach, of course, is Jerry Anders, the former Michigan High School Coach of the Year. And he was also named Coach of the Week by the Detroit Lions. He's the current scouting and training director for Bull Rush Sports. Coach, it's great to have you here with us as usual.
Great to be here, knowing we get to talk victory and get to relax next Sunday and just watch team and not be all stressed out.
That is true. And we want to thank the listeners for checking out the show, and also remind you guys on Twitter, we have our own new Twitter handle now. It's at NTSOL Podcast. We should have launched that probably a year and a half ago, but we just launched it here on January 1st. So if you'd be so kind to follow that tweet, that would be awesome. And let's get started with the show, and we'll do that by hearing from Coach Dan Campbell.
Man, what a win. What a win. Guys, I can't say enough about our defense. Let me start there, man. AG and this defense, they really, controlled that game for us, particularly the first half, 2.5 quarters. The guys on defense, I thought, executed exactly the way that we had worked and what we had talked about. We were able to apply a lot of pressure, and it just paid dividends. That's a good team over there. They're well coached. Just total team effort. Started with our defense, and took the whole unit. But man, what a great job! Back-to-back division winners in the NFC North. Got the 1 seed, 15 wins. I just couldn't be more proud of those guys.
Okay, guys, as we do at the beginning of this, your overall reaction in a couple sentences. James, let's start with you.
Just a great game, great atmosphere. Thanks for taking me along with you to the game. It was just a pretty awesome experience, pretty surreal to go there. I don't know. It was just a pretty amazing day for the Lions franchise and for the fans, everybody.
Hear, hear. Coach, how about you? Overall reaction to this win?
I love when other people are talking bad about a side of our offense, defense, or specialty teams, because our team seemed to react to it. People are talking a lot of smack about our defense. We saw what happens. And I just want to touch one real quick. Meek, after listening to his review and stuff, guys, afterwards, about another guy that was thrown away or tossed away, and the Lions bring him in and just coach him up. First game ball ever, and he's one of my favorite just after listening to him.
That's awesome. And we talked about in our last show that may have been one of the more unheralded signings this offseason that we didn't realize the dividends it would pay, and we saw that. I can't wait till we break that down. My overall reaction, guys, I said this about 7 weeks ago. I said the team's better than I thought they were, which is hard to believe because I already had high thoughts and held them in high esteem. I think they proved it again, you guys. Undefeated in the division, 15-2, franchise best record. And Coach, defenses win what?
Championships.
I had someone quote that to me about 3 days ago, saying the Lions didn't have it to get it done. We're going to talk about this. Okay, well, let's talk about what we liked. Let's start with that defense. Coach, they held the Vikings to 0-4 in the red zone. I can't even count how many pressures they got on Sam Darnold. What did you see out of this Lions defense that you liked?
No, it's just unbelievable. 73% man in situations, which is just And the way they disguised it was incredible. Darnold was 14.7 QBR on those reps. 14.7. 6+ pass rushers 13 times. That's the
Holy
most.
cow, that's some pressure because most of the time it's a 4-person. Sometimes you send that fifth, but the Lions again. You've been able to watch the film a little bit. You saw the game on the air broadcast. You're telling me 6 times or 13 times they sent 6 or more pass rushers?
Yes, yes. It was unbelievable. We hit Darnold 10 times. The one I love the most is that double A gap X Mike and Will linebacker blitzes in the middle. And then that just kept the pressure. And we just kept him in the box. We kept him in the box. We kept pressure on him. How many times you guys saw it from the stands? How many times did he throw off his back heel? Oh,
Oh
it's
man,
beautiful.
yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, he was 18 of 41 for 166 yards. I think at halftime he was 9 of 20,
Mhm.
and you saw it there. He missed some open guys, coach, and that goes to that pressure right there, right? That's where when they're sending that many people, that means your coverage is limited, and it increases the chance of there being somebody open. But you got to make the play, right, coach?
Oh, for sure. And they couldn't do it. I mean, you can't, golf stepped into some passes and took hits. Darnold backpedaled and threw it off his back heel. It was a total of 33 pressures that I have, 22 hurries. 33 pressures and 22 hurries. And again, we manned them up. I already talked about that. We zoned them up. We schemed them up. They had no answer, had no idea what we're doing. The switch coverages in the end zone, guys. I talked to you about that before. We did that earlier in the year. Switch covers, switch motions. We didn't follow. We just pointed. The communication was unbelievable to watch it on TV. And of course, as you know, I have one TV going and one 10-second, 15-second delay to my right, so I can watch the play over and over. And it was just beautiful. It was a musical, guys. I'm telling you, it was a musical.
It sure felt like a musical inside that stadium. James, what do you want to add about the defense here for the Lions?
Yeah, I think that what the Lions did on defense. I mean, Aaron Glenn out Flores, with the bringing the pressure with the blitzes, and it really shows the difference between Sam Darnold and Jared Goff. And that Jared Goff was under a lot of similar pressure, and Goff stayed strong in the pocket, delivered to his guys on time, was routinely finding his third reads on plays. And in the same situations, Darnold was not able to do that. He was missing receivers all over the place, even when they were open. He was not able to get through his progressions nearly as fast as Goff did and get to that third guy who might have been open. I mean, it was like his old Jets thing. He was seeing ghosts and he was getting rid of the ball because he did not want to get hit.
Yeah, I mean, coach, a light bulb went on about halftime for me with this. And that was Sam Darnold has not played in a game of this magnitude. And so that's where I started realizing, I was thinking that pressure may have been getting to him because Jared Goff's gone through this. The entire Lions team went through the NFC Championship game last year. They played against the Rams last year to start the playoff drive. And so did that play a factor in this, you think? Because I don't want to take anything away from what Sam Darnold has accomplished this year. He's had an amazing season, but it seemed, I mean, we saw him missing those wide open people. And so it seemed like the fact that that pressure was on him, that played a key role in this game.
Oh, for sure. And I think, playing in those big games, it makes a big difference. But we talked about this. We even talked about the film last week, guys. Remember when I came out and I said, listen, it doesn't always look as bad as it is. Okay. And when you watch film as a coach, you kind of go, oh my God, that doesn't look that bad. Oh, we ran into each other. Oh, and that's the thing that you could see. The Lions just coached the guys up. There was nobody on pick plays. There was nobody slamming anybody. There was nobody tripping over somebody. There wasn't, we never allowed them to get out and never allowed him to get comfortable, which we had talked about. Almost every quarterback doesn't throw well under pressure, unless his name is Jared Goff. And I'm going to say that because the numbers are out there. And those are the things that, we talked about. The switching on the defenses, knowing that they're in man coverage, knowing that, they had two eye safeties, they double cover cover the two outside receivers. Then they would single cover them and go man coverage. Then they would bring the blitz and go zero coverage. I don't know how many times they ran zero coverage, guys. There was not a safety in the middle of the field, and it was just beautiful to watch. And I think that's the thing. Again, we talk about this coaching staff and how great they are. The cream rises to the top every time you watch these guys. And that's, I don't care if you're a guy they just pulled off the street or a guy that's been in the program. And if they make a mistake the week before, they don't make a mistake the next week. They don't make the same mistake the next week. It's incredible.
It really is incredible. I mean, I think the Zadarius Smith sack in the first quarter for a loss of 17 kind of helped set the tone for this. There were only 2 sacks in the whole game by the Lions, but getting that one early, it set the tone saying this isn't going to be an easy game. Aaron Glenn game planned this thing up. And Coach, I talked to you, so did James, last week, and we're like, can this defense rebound? Because they've had a pretty good defense up until the last few weeks. And you said the key was Alex Anzalone in the lineup. And we saw the difference that made. And we saw Kindle Vildor have to play a key role in this one as well, James. I mean, tell me what you saw more out of this defense.
Oh, the cornerbacks were just amazing all game long. Aaron Glenn, to dial up that pressure, had to leave them on islands alone against, Justin Jefferson, one of the top 2 or 3 receivers in the entire NFL. Jordan Addison, who's having a very good season. Jalen Naylor, who's been coming on and is a burner. And he had to leave those guys in one-on-one coverage. And all 3 of them stood up. Terrion Arnold, Amik Robertson, and then when Arnold left the game, they put Kindle Vildor in, and they did not change the defense. They just said, you go out there and you cover Justin Jefferson one-on-one. That last drive that they had, it was all Vildor on Jefferson. Amik did a lot before, not taking anything away from Amik. He had an incredible game. But I was just surprised they just said, okay, Arnold's out, Terrion or Vildor, you're in for him. Justin Jefferson's your guy. Go get him. And Amik did a really good job on Justin Jefferson too. I mean, he gave up a touchdown to him in the first game, and I think he really took that personal. And this time around was not gonna let that happen. I mean, obviously they didn't get a touchdown because the only touchdown the Vikings got was when their plane landed.
Yes, in Detroit. Touche there. Well, you're right, though. Justin Jefferson has feasted historically against the Detroit Lions. He has gone off. He had 3 catches for 54 yards on 9 targets. That is incredible. Jalen Naylor, 3 for 53 on 4 targets. Jordan Addison, did he seriously have 1 catch for 0 yards on 6 targets? Like, that is incredible, Coach. And this defense, they lost Terrion Arnold in the third quarter, and those numbers didn't balloon up after that, which talks about what Amik did and how Vildor really filled in well at that point as well, as James was talking about, Coach.
Oh, yeah. Vildor had the big punch out, guys. I thought he created a fumble. He got beat a little bit, but he was right on top of him. And they didn't turn in any big splash plays. And that's the big thing with that. And, let's go back to Anzalone. The green dot is back. Okay, and I'm going to say it again, the green dot is bad. The guy that runs that defense, the quarterback on the defense, runs that defense. It helps our coverage. It helps people aligning correctly. It helps with, hey, I'll man up Hawkinson. Okay, now, hey, Campbell, why don't you man up Hawkinson and I'll go. Or, hey, we'll make a cross blitz. Anzalone's, he's a dog, man. He is a 6'3", 240-pound wrecking ball. And coming downhill and Trevor had a big game again. All those guys, they just fit in there because that's a calming. Look at our offense that Jared Goff wasn't playing. And I'm not talking bad about any of our quarterbacks or anything. I'm just saying that's a huge thing. And that's what Anzalone is for us. He can align us. He can settle us down. Campbell can go run around and just hit people instead of worrying about lining people up. We talked about that last week. Remember I told you about the play where Campbell was pointing 2 linebackers to get one place and one to get here. And the next thing you know, the ball snapped. Did you ever see the Lions not lined up in their football position on defense, ready to go 25 seconds before the play started? I mean, it was just beautiful.
It was, and they allowed, I guess you could say, maybe 3 explosives in this whole game. A 58-yard run by Cam Akers, a 31-yard catch by Justin Jefferson, and a 27-yarder by Jalen Naylor. None of those went for a touchdown, though. which was huge. Even that 58-yard run by Cam Akers, it allowed the Lions to get into their red zone defense. And that was one of the big difference makers in this one. Well, we'll get to the fact that the Lions defense did not get any takeaways. I thought they would, and they still won this game. They turned the ball over twice and still won this game, which we'll get to. But not allowing those touchdowns on those explosives was huge, because that's like the fast break in basketball when you get the easy layup, right? They shut it down and said, okay, you want to get inside the 20, now you got to earn it, or inside the 7, and you got to earn it. James, the team coverage was pretty amazing.
Yeah, their PFF grade, and again, I don't take PFF grades too seriously, but there are a nice number to look at now and then. The team coverage grade was 73.8, which is their second best of the season after the Dallas game. These days of the last season, we saw where teams that had a legit number one wide receiver, and that guy was just going to get 130 yards against the Lions. It seemed like every week, whether it was Mike Evans or Puka Nacua or Cooper Kupp for the Rams. If anybody had an elite wide receiver, that guy was going to get his, and the Lions had to figure out something else to do on defense, and that seems to kind of be gone now. It's not happening nearly as much. Terry Arnold had just a great game to reiterate that. Didn't allow a single completion. He wasn't credited with allowing a completion all game before he left the game with an injury.
All right, and Darnold had a QB rating of a 55, which is incredible to hold him to that number considering the numbers he's had all season. I don't know if it was due to injury or not. I am surprised that the Vikings did not try to run the ball more when they got inside the 5-yard line. Not that it necessarily would have garnered them what they wanted, but when you're that close and you have a guy like Aaron Jones, I was surprised they didn't push it more with that. Coach, some final thoughts on defense and how good it looked for the Lions?
It's just unbelievable how they stepped up and did their job. And again, we go back to it's what they do during the week to prepare themselves, how they learn from their mistakes to prepare themselves, and how we talked about it last week too, guys. I think they were working on some things for this week against the 49ers. Remember, I said there's some different things and we just saw it. It just came together, and it was a beautiful sight to see.
All right. And, with that, we saw complimentary football get played in this game because the Vikings were 0-4 or 0 for 4 in the red zone. They had 7 plays that were first and goal, and the Lions gave up just 3 points. I mean, that's huge. I mean, one of them was an interception by Jared Goff inside your own 15-yard line, and they held them to outside the end zone. That said, there was time when the Lions offense stepped up and made some plays. I mean, Coach, we saw Jared Goff in a quickly closing pocket so many times. And you already alluded to this. He stood there and threw the ball. And this was his 9th game with a 75% completion percentage in a season. That's the most in NFL history. Brady had 8 games back in 2007. I know you wanted to sing some praises about Jared Goff, Coach. Again, what makes this guy so good? And even if he's not perfect, he's pretty darn talented.
Mm-hmm. Pre-snap reads, first of all. Second of all, he trusts what's in front of him. Third of all, he has no fear. I think James even alluded to it. He was going through one of you guys. He was going through his progression on everything. He knows this is going to get open. He knows that's going to get open. And I think that's the biggest thing with him is his toughness in the pocket and his awareness of the pocket is just and he takes a sack. He takes a sack in a situation instead of he grounds the ball in the end zone, which everybody's going to complain about. But there was somebody there, and he doesn't make those huge mistakes. Oh my God, he's got 12 picks this year, right, guys? Well, 4 of them have been on tip balls. Okay, another one was a takeoff route this past game that he threw to JMO, who lost sight of it because they took a shot from the end zone. They started 2 possessions inside the 5, on those short fields. And again, he gets us to a point to where we don't have a huge problem. He never gets it to a point where we lose a game because of it.
Yeah, that makes it. And I said he's not a perfect quarterback because there isn't a perfect quarterback, but you've seen him grow so much. Because, Coach, there was a point in the game where he took a sack, and I know some fans around us got frustrated. And I was like, he did the right thing at that moment because that avoided one of those big momentum shifting plays.
Mm-hmm.
James, what is it about Goff that you liked in this game that you thought helped make the difference in the victory?
A lot of what we already kind of alluded to. I mean, he sat there when he was getting blitzed and did not flinch. He stepped up in the pocket. He didn't run around and keep backpedaling and backpedaling and backpedaling like Darnold did in that one time to take a 17-yard sack. Like Jerry said, if the play wasn't there, he'd just throw the ball away or ground it near at somebody that was in the vicinity. I mean, there was Brock Wright was in the vicinity there in the end zone when he just threw it away, threw it towards his feet to avoid a grounding in the end zone, which would have been a safety. Darnold got called for grounding later in the game for just chucking the ball downfield when there was nobody open, just chucking it to an open section of field.
For sure. And so we've talked about Jared Goff on the offense, but I almost feel like, we're burying the lead here, you guys. The offensive weapon that the Detroit Lions overdrafted a year ago, Jahmyr Gibbs. The stats from this game are phenomenal. 139 yards on the ground, 3 rushing touchdowns. All right. His longest was a 47-yard run. In addition to that, he had 5 catches for 31 yards and a touchdown catch. I think fantasy football owners lament that this happened in the last week of the season after their fantasy football seasons ended. But that's okay. We don't care about the fantasy football aspect. We are just darn impressed with Jahmyr Gibbs. Coach, talk to us about the running back here and what he has given this offense and what he did for this offense in the most meaningful regular season game in Lions history, likely.
Well, let's just talk about the hit he took from Van Ginkel. Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's a play I want to talk about on something I didn't like, but his ability to get open, first of all, Van Ginkel tried to cover man coverage on the inside seam run, where he went wide on it. He is so fast and so explosive. He's in 2 years, he has grown into one of the elite running backs. He wouldn't run between the tackles. Now he goes between the tackles. He sets his blocks up so well. He catches those flare passes on the side. You know what I love about him? He is tougher. He's tougher than people think, and we saw it on some of the big runs. But I also love when they throw the ball to him and he only gains 9 yards. Okay, you guys notice that he runs out of bounds. Part of me is like, dude, put your foot in the dirt. You got Tim Patrick coming across to clean somebody up, but he saves himself in those situations. And right now, he did this last year. He picked it up for us when Monty was down, and now look what he did for us this year. He's elite, and he makes so many splash plays that it changes our offense. And with all those weapons, he knows when it's his time. And let's throw out there his blocking, guys. He had some great jobs on pass blocking. We switched out Reynolds because not because he can't do it, but why get him beat up doing that? And so and again, it was a dumb pick. We should have never went up in the first round to pick a guy like that. What a waste of time. I don't know why the Lions draft a guy in the first round, a running back. And thank God it worked out. They got lucky again. It's just crazy how lucky they get all the time with their draft picks.
I love that sarcasm, Coach, because it helps show the due process of it and how thankful we are that Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell are guiding this ship. James, the Jahmyr Gibbs effect was intense. I mean, he held up one of those pass rushes just enough time as either him or Reynolds to give Goff that extra second to throw the ball. And Goff didn't just hit Gibbs, he hit St. Brown, Laporta, and Williams for each 5 or more catches. So that's spreading the ball around. Talk to me more about this offense, James.
Well, yeah, both Gibbs and Reynolds did a pretty good job in picking up the the blitz, which is great against the Vikings because you know they're going to bring it and bring it from all kinds of places, so you don't know where it's going to come from play to play. But they did a pretty darn good job of picking it up, and that pocket got collapsed a decent amount around Goff, but never enough to really to get him and to get him off of what they wanted to run. There was the one interception he kind of I don't know, maybe rushed his throw a little bit and didn't get enough on it. The one that got where he tried to kind of dink it over a little bit, but that wasn't that bad. But I don't know if you saw what the Lions tweeted out. Their social media person last night was on point. When they retweeted a Jahmyr Gibbs stat from the NFL and then just said positional value is all they said.
Nice. And that goes back to how this offense worked. They overcame those turnovers because the defense kept them in it when the offense wasn't clicking. That whole complementary football. You guys, the Lions lost the turnover battle 2-0 against a 14-2 team at the time. Yet we somehow won the time of possession 36-24 and ultimately won the game. All right. Any other, things you like that you want to talk about before we move on to some pivotal moments in the game? All right, well, let's head over there. I'm going to start with the first score of the game. The Lions on 4th and 5 passed to Jamo for a 14-yard gain, and then Jahmyr Gibbs rips off a 25-yard run. Puts the Lions up 7-0. When the Lions go up 7-0 like that, that gives them the lead, Coach, and that helps allow them to dictate the game versus someone else is dictating the game for them. And so how key was that? And how did you view that in your mind?
Well, I did. I mean, getting the first score, I mean, that's the thing you have to do with a team like that. You want to, we talked about it in pre-thing. We wanted to get them behind so that, Darnold's another play action pass guy, and if we could get them into that situation where they were struggling with it, it's bad. And I mean, that's the biggest thing was, you get the first big pass play, and then Gibbs rips off that 25-yard, which is great blocking. Again, set up the pass, the run, or set up the run to pass or the play action. No matter what, the Lions always figure out a way that's going to work best for them, and they stick with that plan. And it was huge to get that first score.
And it's almost like you got the Vikings then trying to play the Lions game versus play their own game. And you saw some of that as well in this thing where I think the Vikings uncharacteristically went for it at times instead of taking field goals or whatnot. And, I know the Lions had that issue against Tampa where we were 0 for 5 in the red zone way back in week 2, but that might have changed the game if they had put some points on the board early there. James, what's something else you saw as a turning point in this game?
I thought it was the player introductions. It was just great. They did the defense. They announced the defense first, even though the Lions were going to start on offense, even though the Vikings won the toss and and elected to kick off and the Lions were going to start on offense. They elected to announce the starting defense, and send those players out of the tunnel one at a time. And the last one they left was Alex Anzalone, and the crowd went crazy. I almost wanted to say something else that we can't put on the podcast. The crowd went crazy. You could tell that the team went crazy, that they were excited to have him back. I mean, he just really sparked this defense. I think he played every snap of the game on defense except for one. Did not miss a tackle all game. Had a quarterback hit. Gave up a couple of catches, but in his PFF grade was pretty similar to what he normally plays. So having him back was huge, I think, for both schematically and mentally for this defense that had struggled for a few weeks.
It was, and that was huge to get the crowd into that with Anzalone and that introduction. Another time it was in the fourth quarter. I believe it was 24-9. The Lions were leading at that point. The Vikings had a third down, and they showed Hutchinson on the screen. Like, they showed him there, and he started getting people fired up. Coach, did they show him on TV at that point?
Oh yeah, they showed him then, and then they showed him on the sidelines, and they kept showing him with the earpiece on, and they're going to feed off that, man.
They did, because right after that, that's when the Lions got their second sack of the game, and the crowd was so loud, and the Vikings were forced to punt. And again, the crowd did such a great job playing into that, making it that true home field advantage. And that helped lead to those red zone stops, James. So tell me more about what you got.
Yeah, well, and when they showed, it was funny in the stadium when they showed Hutchinson, like he knew the camera was on him. I think he looked up and saw that he was on the jumbotron, and he dropped two F-bombs looking right into the camera to urge
Ooh.
that defense on.
I
And
missed the lip reading myself, so I did not catch that. But I do know how fired up the crowd got between showing Eminem and Hutchinson. And that crowd, I don't know what the numbers were. I don't know if they beat those playoff ones from last year. But I do know the crowd was intense, and it played a role, and it created some penalties. We had some awesome penalties in there that were crowd related.
Yeah, and we talked about the turnovers. The Lions technically lost the turnover battle, but if you count the 3 turnovers on downs that they forced, they won. That's a net gain.
Yeah, and there's that one that Vildor punched out, Coach, that you talked about, that it was so close that it looked like it was a fumble, but they called an incomplete pass. And then there was the one in the end zone where Amik almost had that interception. I believe it was Amik, and broke that up. But even though they didn't get the interception, they kept them out of the end zone. And so that was good, because if they can't score touchdowns, it's really hard to outscore this offense. Speaking of scoring, the Lions held them to a field goal right before halftime, and you're thinking, okay, there's 24 seconds left, but that wasn't the end of the story. It wasn't 7-6 halftime. The kickoff goes out of bounds. 2 pass plays later, and Jake Bates hits a field goal to go up 10-6 at halftime. Coach, the Vikings were like, hey, it's 7-6. We get the ball coming out. That's when you try to double up to try and change it. It's only 3 points, Coach, but does something like that change the mentality going in at the halftime for a team in a feel?
Oh, that was one of my key moments, too, that I thought about as soon as that happened. The ball goes out of bounds. We hit a pass play to Patrick and a pass play to Raymond. Let me say that again. We hit a pass play to Patrick and a pass play to Raymond.
Yeah.
4 and 5, again, fine guys. And then we kick, we get in there and we kick that field goal. Those are momentum changers. They get the ball coming out at halftime, right? They get the ball coming out at halftime at 7-6. They're coming out going, all right, we're up 13-7 after halftime. Now they're down 4 again. Now they're down 4 again. So now a field goal, even out of the halftime, we still win. We're still leading, right? And so I think that was a huge point in that, because you could see KOC and the rest of the team running off the field with their heads down. It was like, oh my God. And then now the kicker's got it in his head. Oh my God, I screwed this game up. Maybe it's going to come down to a critical kick at the end of the game, and he's probably going to sure sinks a lot. Those are just things. That's huge, you guys. And you guys know, that's a huge play in the game.
Yeah, and if it's a 7-6 game, you might settle for a field goal later, knowing you're up 9-7 versus, it's 10-9. You feel like you need that touchdown. So it affects some of those things. Mm-hmm. James, anything else you have for turning points or pivotal moments in this?
I just have one kind of, I think, not necessarily a moment, but a guy that created a lot of moments was Levi Onwuzurike. He had 9 pressures in that game out of 1 guy. It was just a great game by him. He was the one who was crushing that pocket a lot of times. Didn't get a sack or anything. I think it was Zadarius that got the one, and Muhammad got the other one, which is a really nice one. But Levi was just everywhere during this game. I can sort of see why Minnesota didn't want to run up the middle against him either. He just was playing like a man possessed. Even though, like you said, I think they should have been running a little bit more inside the red zone, because it was fairly effective. When they gave Aaron Jones the ball, he was getting decent chunk yardage, and then Cam Akers had that one long run and some other decent ones. So, I don't know what their idea was there, why they went against the run. Maybe Jones is still banged up from that injury he had last week, but I would have used him more, especially considering what the Lions were doing to Darnold.
Yeah, and also, even when he didn't gain a lot, the Lions rarely tackled Jones or a running back for a loss. I think they only had a couple tackles for a loss in this game. So they were still getting at least a couple of yards when they weren't getting more. And that pressure you brought up by Levi Onwuzurike, this is a perfect stat. We all want the sacks. We all want the sacks. But we saw in this game how the pressures changed the quarterback play, because there were some guys when the Lions took some risks that had some open spots and could have made some catches if the ball had been thrown well. And it wasn't because of the pressures. Coach, anything else pivotal you want to talk about before we get to things we didn't like or things we're concerned about?
No, I think that's it. I mean, again, Pascal had a pretty good game too. Actually, a really good game. The front four had a good game in the blitz concepts, and I just think Muhammad and Connor had was doing some good things. And again, that front four, and again, we could run our base defense, guys, and we're a pretty good football team when we can run our base defense. And getting the green dot back, and the rest of the guys, it's starting to pick up.
There you go. And so let's turn into things we didn't like or concerns. There isn't a whole lot to not like. I think the Terrion Arnold injury was probably the biggest thing we all thought that we didn't like. And if my notes are correct, it happened in the third quarter, and the Lions were leading 10-6 at this point, and Goff had thrown an interception, and then Terrion Arnold gets hurt. And they're, just before midfield. So you're sitting here thinking, oh, great. Now we're down Arnold after being down Carlton Davis as well. The Lions held them to a field goal there, and then the rest of the defense stepped up the rest of the way. We know that story. But Arnold getting hurt for the long term is what's concerning the most. So, and again, we won't know a lot more until later. But James, start with you. What do you have on that, and what's your thought process on that?
Well, I think it was Campbell who said the initial X-rays came back negative, so there's nothing broken in his foot, hopefully. I saw another guy who kind of analyzes injuries on Twitter from football games, and he was saying that it looks like maybe he just kind of hyperextended his toes, which is essentially what turf toe is. And that he was on a walking boot after the game, which is better than being in crutches. And then Dave Burkett, one of the beat writers from Detroit, quoted him after the game as saying, "I'm going to be back for the playoff game. Like I'm playing in the playoff game." So everything, if you're an optimist, things are looking good for Terrion Arnold. We'll see how things come out, because the next day things can always change with injuries. Something swells up, all that kind of stuff. But looks decent. But we got such good production out of the rest of the secondary that. And not that I'm not worried, having Terrion Arnold there would be great in that second round, depending on who they're playing. But everything looks decent, at least.
And one more reason why we are so thankful to have that bye and have that rest. Coach, bring up the things that you didn't like or concerned about, because those could have been some game changers.
Yeah, well, one of them, Zeit got hurt too, the guard. I don't know if you guys saw that.
I did not see that.
He hurt his hamstring in fourth quarter, so he kind of limped off the field pretty good. So that might be a little concern there. But again, we got a couple weeks off. O'Connor went out too, but that didn't sound bad either. So Zeitz looked like he pulled his hamstring a little bit. So
okay,
play down. So yeah,
definitely keep an eye on that.
Yeah, that's a couple things, but the screen plays the Van Kinkel side. We almost had a pick six. Gibbs almost got knocked out of the game because of it. Sewell had a tough time reaching him on those blocks. I mean, Sewell had a really tough time on that. So again, which isn't normal. So, and we did it 2 or 3 times, in the same concept, trying to catch him. He's just a smart, savvy player. The only thing I can figure out is he maybe lined up a little bit wider because of the way we run our swing passes. And so he was able to get that jump, and Goff wasn't, because usually we don't attack that. We don't attack a flaw in our offensive scheme. If there's something that they can make a play on, Ben Johnson's pretty good at either adjusting it or going, let's get the hell out of that play and move on. So that was kind of a concern, especially almost the pick six one. And I was like, why are we doing this? Why do we keep doing this? But again, it could have been. But then we did hit a couple screens over him. But it was the same thing on the interception that Goff threw in the first half. They got pressure. If he just gets it up over a little bit, we kind of chased them. And if we get up over a little bit, I think it was Reynolds chased them. And
Yeah.
so if he'd have been down the field a little bit farther on the release, it would have went for a huge, huge gain. So, those are, and same thing on I think it was the fourth down play that they tipped the ball because of great pressure, or JMO's probably still running. So, but other than that, yeah, they'll make those changes. I just I never see us attacking their best, but it's all good too.
Makes a lot of sense. James, what do you want to add to that?
I think maybe what they're, and this is just me guessing, just an assumption. I think that they were more happy to have Greenard and Van Ginkel in pass coverage than blitzing. So they were going to attack them with the screens. They did it early in the game with Greenard, and he had a couple of fairly nice plays too, early in the game. And then they started going to Van Ginkel's side, and then and kind of going back and forth. But I think it was kind of a pick their poison thing with them. Do we want them blitzing Goff, or do we want them having to maybe think about covering that screen pass for a second?
Yeah, which set up that touchdown too to Gibbs. Because if you guys rewatch that film, Gibbs went outside like he was going to run a little flare route, whatever they call it, a little quick out, little speed out, and Van Ginkel, of course, Gibbs was already at about 11.9 miles an hour when he went running by him. So, yeah, they picked their poison. We almost backfired, but I think we won.
Yes, we did. And so let's hit some major storylines. We already kind of talked a little bit about Sam Darnold's play. And again, the magnitude of the game, I think that played a role. And the Lions' halftime adjustments, Coach. Last year we were talking about this in a whole different light, but they outscored the Vikings 21-3 in the second half. I think it's like the second week in a row where we saw the Lions take a game that was close at halftime and open it up in the second half and not look back. How do you credit the Lions for doing this? What do you see them doing that's just making this happen?
I think that again they're making great halftime adjustments, but I'm also, because listening to some of the pressers afterwards, the press conferences and things like that, and reading stuff that these guys are writing about, they're not emptying the playbook, or they're not emptying the farm. They're going with their game plan that they went in with, and then they tweak it. Instead of saying, "Oh, we ran the ball in the first half, let's start out throwing." No, let's tweak the run and make that perfect. And then that'll set up the pass. Those are just kind of an example. So that's what I see them doing, and basically tweaking the game plan to make it better, instead of throwing away the game plan, or throwing away part of the game plan, or totally changing things over. I mean, they're just defensively and offensively, it's been great to watch.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, that has led to them being 15-2 this year, guys. Best record in franchise history. Back-to-back division titles. This gives them a bye week as well. So those are some big things. We'll get into that bye week thing and talk about the Jet just briefly. But none of that's possible without Jahmyr Gibbs. 4 touchdowns. 4 touchdowns in one game. That puts him 20 on the season, the most by any Detroit Lions player ever, passing Jamal Williams, who had 17 rushing, I believe it was, a couple years ago, James. Those numbers are pretty incredible. Oh, and James, I want to add, Jahmyr Gibbs had 1,929 or 1,930 total yards this season from scrimmage alone. When you add his rushing and receiving, I mean, those numbers are off the charts almost.
Yeah. Gibbs's game was just epic. I think is a good term for it. He took that game over on offense. The Lions could throw the ball when they needed to. Goff was pretty well on his game, like you said, over 75% completion, going through his progressions, reading everything right. But add Gibbs onto that, and this Lions offense is, you don't want to say unstoppable, but man, it's hard to slow that down when they got so many different ways they can hit you from. and they're going to get Knuckles back next, for the second round of the playoffs potentially. You got Khalif Raymond back in there now, which gives them another receiver, another return guy. So maybe they, have better field position even. This Lions offense is just pretty incredible.
And we're seeing the evolution of Jamison Williams, Coach. He had 6 receptions for only 34 yards, and I say that lovingly because a couple things. One, that puts him 1 yard over 1,000 for the season. But those 6 catches, I mean, they're trusting him in critical 3rd and 4th down situations that are not easy catches over the middle. I mean, this isn't just throw it deep to JMO and see what happens or, give a lateral to him. They're trusting him in big time moments, Coach. What are you seeing out of this development?
Well, the thing is his route running skills have, like they said, he worked on it so hard. I mean, you heard Goff just praised him, up and down. Praised everybody, of course, because that's how the Lions are. They're making sure they're patting everybody on the back and not leaving anybody out. But, his work ethics to get to be a great route runner as well as a phenomenal athlete. He could be the fastest guy in the NFL, and then you put in great route running. But, he's the one across the middle. I rewatched it and he adjusted it. He came across, he had his bit, and he's coming back to the ball and not allowing the defender to get on him when he comes back to it. And that it's just phenomenal to watch. And hey, I got to touch one other thing.
Hey, Coach. Yeah, actually, I think you're going to go to this spot, but you have been talking about all year how everything the Lions do sets everything up, and I think they did it right here. I mean, just go into this because this talks about the brilliance of Dan Campbell that so many people I think overlook, but you've been saying it all year long, Coach.
The hard count to get the Vikings to jump off sides. Just think about that. And I don't know if you guys saw JMO. I mean, freaking St. Brown dancing. It was one of the funniest things.
He was dancing. Yes, he was.
Oh my God. But anyways, let's go. Let's talk about that. They used the heart count to get the Vikings to jump off sides because in the Vikings' mind, the Lions might be going for it here. And the reason I bring that up because let's go back to the Packers game. Okay, the Lions lined up. We talked about how the Packers stayed back, thinking they're going to try to get us to jump off sides to get the first down, and we ran the ball and ran the clock out. Okay, everybody talked about this. That was on everybody's mind for a week about how dumb and stupid that call was. And guess what? They're playing chess, not checkers, you guys. They did the exact same thing, and they got the Vikings. And they probably saw it. I'm telling you right now, Golf probably watched the Lions scrimmage, looked down and said, every one of those defensive linemen have white knuckles because they're digging into the ground because they're going to make this stop, and we used it against them. Don't question what these guys do. Honor them. If it doesn't work, go, must be for a reason, and it ends up turning into a great reason. Setting them up, chess. Knight, king, whatever, doesn't matter. Checkmate.
Coach, I don't know that the Lions were actually going to go for it on that play.
They weren't.
Yeah.
They weren't. Goff said it. He goes, we were doing it to draw them off sides. The point is, they set it up 5 games ago or 4 games ago, and people are always questioning them, but you just can't question what they're doing. You can't question what they're doing.
It's so incredible the way they're playing. And what they've set up now is a bye week. That if any playoff game they have outside of a Super Bowl appearance will be played at Ford Field at this point because of this. So the playoff picture here, James, the Lions get the bye. The Green Bay Packers will go to Philadelphia. The Green Bay Packers, are going to Philly. Washington is going to play Tampa. And the Vikings are now going to play the Rams. And again, the Vikings played the Rams after they played the Lions before this season, and that was their only other loss on the season. We will probably do another show later this week, just kind of touching on a few different things and looking into this. But initially, James, what are your thoughts on the playoff picture now that we kind of know some of these things are in place?
Well, the Lions got the Vikings a nice wintertime, all expenses paid trip to California. And all it cost the Vikings was $2 million.
There you go. That's for all those seats they got. All right. So, Coach, I'm of the mentality, and we'll talk about this again, I'm sure, in our next episode, is I'm not worried about the opponent. I just wanted the bye week and home field, and I'm sure that's exactly your mentality at this point.
Oh, it is. Normally you want to keep just rolling. You know what I'm saying? You want to just keep rolling. You don't want to wait another week and sit around and I mean I always think the teams last year that had the bye week, what happened to them? But the Lions need it, man. They haven't had a bye week since week 5. We are banged up. We are injured. And the other thing is too, the way they practice and the way they do things in the simulations and the situations at practice, they run a simulation of a game during their practices and stuff. And there's no doubt in my mind the Detroit Lions will be ready when they start the playoffs because they're going to be rested, and hopefully we have a couple guys back and a couple of these banged up injuries that we got in the last game that they're ready to go when we play in round 2 of the playoffs.
And, if the seeding holds, if the number 2 and 3 seeds both happen to win, which would be Philadelphia and Tampa, the winner of the Rams and Vikings game would come back and play in Detroit. And they're playing the Monday Night Football game. So the nice thing is going into that, we'll know if it's one of those teams or not. If that is the case, the Lions are going to play either Saturday or Sunday that following week. If they're playing the Rams-Vikings winner, they'll be playing on Sunday because they wouldn't put them on a shorter week, making them play a Saturday likely after a Friday night game. So that'll be worth keeping an eye on. We'll talk about that. Let's get into final thoughts here. First, I want to give a shout out to Roaster Jack's Coffee in Traverse City, right? Longtime listeners, and we appreciate that. They sent us a coffee care package. They knew a couple of us were going down to the game. They said, you need to have some fuel to get yourself through, to get yourself back. And you know what? We have successfully made it through the day after, celebrating, and that's awesome. Thank you for that care package right there.
I wanted to thank your friend at the game, Margie, for she came to the game prepared with a clear bag full of sore throat lozenges to give to fans who were yelling their just people were just giving it their all from our section and going crazy. And so she gave us some lozenges. That helped a lot.
There you go. That was definitely helpful. We met some other fans there. We met Wayne and Megan. They're actually from Dayton, Ohio. They're Detroit Lions fans. And they say, you know what? Everybody actually is cool with them. It's when they put on their Michigan sweatshirts that they seem to have problems in that area, which not completely shocking. But they were thankful to get there. And there were some Vikings fans there. We actually met some, James, before the game, and they were part of that $2 million you were talking about, that $2 million.
Yeah, the whole thing with the Vikings. I guess the Lions tried to kind of ask the league, "Hey, is this legal?" And the league said, "Well, I guess there's really nothing that we can do about it, about the Vikings buying 1,900 tickets to the game and then turning around and reselling them even cheaper to their own people." So they took a bit of a hit there. I mean, they spent $2 million to buy 1,900 tickets at about $1,000 a piece, and then resold them for like between $200 and $400 to their fans and all that stuff. The guys that we talked to, they weren't even the season ticket holders that they offered them to. They were in a fan group, a big fan group that they offered them to. So I imagine they went through the season ticket holders and still had some left, and then reached out to these fan groups and said, "Hey, do you want some of these?" And that's how they got theirs.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, they're from Ohio as well, and they drove up for the game. And we also heard stories of people who bought the tickets from the Vikings. There were Vikings fans, and then resold those tickets to make money off of the discounted ticket they purchased from the Vikings. Speaking of the Vikings, the Skol chant kind of somewhat sort of happened. James, you want to talk about that?
I thought it was pretty amusing. I mean, it's not respectful, I guess, but it was still pretty funny when the Lions went up 3 scores, that Lions fans started doing the clapping their hands above their heads like in the Skol chant and then chanting Skol.
Yeah, and you obviously, I was right next to you. I had almost the complete opposite reaction, which was, why are we doing this, guys? Like, I don't know. I've got nothing against the Vikings. They're a very good team, 14-3 at this point. But, I guess they could become a pretty strong rival of ours. I know they're a division rival already. And with both teams on the trajectory they're on, we could have some battles for a while. But I guess I was more focused on us, and let's just take care of ourselves and not give that type of attention. But that's just my personal thing. Either way, people were having fun. And that's what I liked the most seeing at that crowd. The atmosphere was incredible. Was it the same as a playoff game? I would say it probably was a playoff game atmosphere. Now, does it rival? And it probably does rival the Rams game from last year, but I think that Rams game is going to be in its own category for a very long time because of all the things leading up to it and the way that game ended, where there was a lot of tension in this game early on from people around us, but you saw through the third quarter it kind of go away. And Lions fans just had a lot of fun in that second half, James.
For sure. I mean, the skull chants alone, I think, were worth it. But I told you before the game, I said I thought I had a pretty good feeling about this, that I wasn't incredibly nervous. Like I thought I would be more, and I thought I'd get more nervous as we got closer to game time. But that never really went away. I kind of felt like the Lions had some tricks up their sleeves and had some answers for this pretty good Vikings team, and they certainly did.
Yeah, I put on social media, my tension throughout the week was building. I could feel it. And it wasn't that I didn't think we could win. It just was so much was at stake that I felt we've done so much. Why do we have to go through this? Like, we've already earned it. But we hadn't. We had to win that game. So either way, once game day hit and once we got there, my tension went away and I was just enjoying the game. Coach, any final thoughts here of watching the game, the way it went, and any last thoughts?
No, I think, Jared Goff had a great quote or talked about it. He said, you know what, we thought this was going to happen a couple weeks ago, but it didn't. This is the way it was meant to be. This is the story that they write, like Dan Campbell says, we write our own story. We have our own ink, and that's what it was. And time to move on.
All right. Well, before we do finally move on, I do want to mention I stopped and spoke to some Lions representatives at the season ticket booth. And I said, hey, what is the wait list up to right now? And they said it's approximately 24,000 fans. And to give you a little bit more insight, speaking with a ticket person, they told me that 58,000 of the 65,000 tickets in the stadium are actually held by season ticket holders. So, one fan could hold 2 tickets or 4 tickets or 6 tickets, something like that. But that means there's only about 7,000 that are not season ticket holder held seats. Now, of course, they do sell the standing room only ones as well, so that does go above 65,000. But I don't know, 24,000 fans on the wait list. I'm sure there'll be some turnover next year because there probably always is for a variety of reasons. But that list is that's more than the 10,000 or 12,000 it was when the season started. So that's pretty incredible. James, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, I'm kind of curious, when you got season tickets, how long did you have to wait and what was the wait list?
Oh, no, there wasn't a wait list. I got in probably 4 months before the wait list started, or 5 months before the wait list started. The timing was very serendipitous. Like, I had no idea it was going to go. Well, I did have an idea it might go that way, and that was part of my motivation. There was twofold. One, I saw the resale prices go up double from the previous year, and then I was like, what if we're going to finally become like these other franchises that have waiting lists? Like, the Packers story, but even, we did this in a previous show. The Broncos have like a 3-year, 5-year waiting list. The Minnesota Vikings have like a 3-year waiting list. And the Broncos, they just made the playoffs for the first time in 8 years. Now, I know they've won multiple Super Bowls in the last 25 years, so that also plays into it. Right now, we're focused on what this postseason has to offer. And, Coach, we don't have to go 1-0 this week because we're on a break. And I'm liking the sound of that one. Get healthy, get rested up, and we'll be back with an episode. If stuff comes up, maybe it'll be later this week to kind of give you a little more insights, talk about more what's being talked about with the Lions and the opponents coming up. But until next time, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. You can find more episodes and content at notthesameoldlions.com. Remember, Twitter, NTSOL podcast. Tell your friends about the show. Please subscribe regardless of your listening platform. And until next time, stay gritty, my friends.